want to express my love to you, Vesta. Thank you for loving me and I think allowing RC to love me as well. A great treasure in my life. I never expected to have the honor of knowing him personally. I was a mildly dispensational Baptist. What hope was there for me? I was like a guy in the Civil War with gray pants and a blue coat. I was being shot by both sides. And then, almost out of nowhere, RC stepped into my life, and I just want to speak of that in three ways. First of all, as a friend. It just seemed to me out of nowhere that I was given an invitation to come and speak at a Legionnaire conference. And I had some history with some people very close to RC, namely John Gerstner. John had actually come to Grace Church and done a series. And in his wonderfully inimitable way, he said about me, since you're a dispensationalist, you're going to end up a heretic. He later told RC that didn't happen because I don't think logically. Nonetheless, for reasons I don't know, Vesta, RC opened his heart to me and invited me to Legionnaire to speak. And then he assigned me to speak on the doctrine of election, which I actually thought at the time he had invented. And he was there with his Diet Coke on the front row and his feet crossed. And I knew this was a test. And it was the most public test a human being could ever have to put his theology on display before the great theologian himself. He opened up my life to the riches of Reformed theology. I had discovered it on my own. It's as if I saw the glory tucked away in a rock, and somehow through his ministry and the connections that he made with other people and writers, even going back in history, the full glory of the doctrines of grace exploded on my conscience. He even had the temerity to ask me to debate him on baptism. This was terrifying to me. I never studied for anything that hard in my entire life. If anything came out of that, it proved that if I get desperate enough, I can work hard. And especially when I know who my teacher is. He even nicknamed me Boris. That's another story. But he always endearingly said to me, Johnny Mac. And the last time we had a conversation here, he said to me, finally, why is it, Johnny Mac, that I always have to tell you what you believe? I adored him for that, so many other things. But I saw him not only as a friend, I saw him as a great defender. I'm the last man standing of a group of three that gathered together in Florida, 1995, in one of the most amazing days of my entire life. Evangelicals and Catholics together had come out the year before, And R.C. was profoundly disappointed because the man behind that was a man that claimed R.C. as his mentor, and he had abandoned the true gospel. And for some reason, again, I don't know why I ended up there, but it was James Kennedy, R.C. Sproul, and myself. They're representing the true gospel against those who wanted to accommodate Rome's gospel, Bill Bright, Charles Colson, and J.I. Packer. In 1995, we met in a private room for 7 hours. And I sat next to Jim Packer. It was a massive education. The power in the room, unmistakably for the 7 hours, was R.C. Sproul. I had always hoped that somehow R.C. would write the history of that day. But I don't think he could bring himself to do that because it would have been so much about him. I'm the last man standing, and I will tell you this. He was, without question, the force in that room for the truth. And as I indicated in something I wrote, he actually got on the table, up on the table, and pointed a finger at an adversary and said, "I don't think you get it. This is about whether you're saved or not." As affable, as irrepressibly charming as he was a defender of the faith, even when he was looking in the eyes of a very cherished friend. He never wavered on the gospel. He was strength to me. I always felt like whenever I got into a battle, whether it was way back in the inerrancy conference, there was R.C. When it was the gospel, there was R.C. When it was the charismatic movement, there was R.C. Always standing faithfully for the truth. It was a sad reality in my life that the Lord put us on two coasts, because I didn't have the time with him I really wanted. But whenever I did, it was an indescribable treasure. And then one other category. I think you have to understand this. This is the greatest time in the history of the church for the expansion of sound doctrine. You might say this is the greatest explosion of the truth in history. And the truth, of course, is captured in the doctrines of grace and Reformed theology. People look at the church today and what's going on, very often they say to me, this is a very sad time. There's so much bad preaching. There's so much unbiblical ecclesiology. There's so much poor spiritual leadership. There's so much disinterest in the doctrine of sanctification. There's no real sense of holiness and worship, and all these things. At the same time, there's never been a time in the history of the world where sound doctrine is so available in a split second anywhere on the planet. And the point of the spear for that entire movement in our time was R.C. Sproul. He is this era's great reformer. Because he was my friend, because he was my fellow soldier and defender, and because I follow him as the leader of this explosion of truth, I honor him today by expressing my profound love for him, and as Bob said, the deep hole in my heart that he's not here anymore. But I thank the Lord that he let me into his life for all the blessing it has brought to me. Thank you.